Hello, welcome to Global Eye. I'm Parikshit Luthara. The latest on the India-Canada diplomatic tussle. The United States and the UK have supported Canada after the country confirmed that 41 of its diplomats had been expelled by India last week. Both nations have said that India's move to seek reduction in Canada's diplomatic presence is inconsistent with international law. However, India's External Affairs Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar has said that diplomatic parity was invoked due to continuous interference into India's affairs. Jaishankar also said that suspension of visa services for Canadians is in line with the Vienna Convention and added that the government was reviewing the security situation which led to the suspension of visa services.
We stopped issuing visas in Canada because it was no longer safe for our diplomats to go to work to issue visas. So their safety and security was the primary reason we had to temporarily stop the issue of visas. Ensuring safety and security of diplomats is the most fundamental aspect of the Vienna Convention. And right now, that is what has in many ways been challenged in Canada, that our people are not safe, our diplomats are not safe. So if we see progress there, I would like very much to resume the issue of visas.
All right, let's now go across to Ambassador KC Singh and also Burzine Waghmar, affiliated with the University of London School of Oriental and African Studies. Gentlemen, let's begin with this discussion. Ambassador KC Singh, how do you think these words from US and UK are likely to impact India? Ambassador KC Singh, can you hear me?
Yes, I can now.
Yeah. Ambassador KC Singh, how do you think this move, these words by US and UK, almost condemning India's move, saying that we don't agree with this, this is not consistent with Vienna Convention. How is this likely to impact relations with India?
Firstly, there are two elements to it. One, we are talking about downsizing the Canadian High Commission diplomatic strength in India. And the second one is stopping the consular services in Canada. Now, what you played out was the External Affairs Minister saying that because the diplomats are not feeling safe, therefore we curtailed the services. Now, that may be correct. That is true. They have been threatened. There have been posters put up saying that they should be killed or they should be eliminated. And some action has started on the part of Canada. It is true that if the diplomats are not feeling safe, then naturally they are not, you don't allow civilians to enter your consulate and they come in large numbers, etc. Now, that is something which Canada has to address. The second one is, that is a little doubtful what the External Affairs Minister has said, that there has to be the same number of diplomats. Now, the Vienna Convention, Article 11, only talks of the strength being in terms of the needs of the sending mission and the job that the diplomats have to perform. It does not put any numbers. It does say that unless there is an agreement to the contrary. So I don't think we have an agreement with Canada on reciprocity on the numbers. But if there's no agreement, it basically, between friendly countries, you leave the other country to decide. If a new mission has to be opened, of course, it's by mutual consent. You can't open consulates all over India. Normally, it's if they open one, we open one, and goes on like that. So it's a mixed thing, but very clearly the other countries are finding it odd that instead of addressing the Niger issue, we've started this larger battle, which plays politically well for the ruling party here domestically.
Right. Let me go across to Burzine now. Burzine, how do you see this move? And do you think this will impact India-UK relations as well? This is a time when we're negotiating with India. There are FTA negotiations going on. Both US and UK have said that India should not insist upon reduction in Canada's diplomatic presence here in India.
Well, first things first, the ambassador's comments as a diplomat are instructive. And if we are harping on parity, Parikshit, the question is this. It comes down to even consular fees in your respective currencies, which are undergirded by parity. So never mind that, something so banal as fees, it is tacitly assumed among friendly countries, as he put it, that there is parity in terms of your consular or diplomatic presence in respective countries. Canada has missions in India, in Chandigarh, Bombay, and Bangalore, besides the High Commission in New Delhi. India only operates in Toronto and Vancouver, besides the High Commission in Ottawa. Now, it's one thing to say the Indian Foreign Service is generally understaffed, which we do know it is, but it's quite another to say that India oughtn't undertake this move and is simply doing it. The insinuation is that India is being peevish about it. That is not being put out by diplomats, obviously, but that is the insinuation. And then you must ask yourself, why is India aggrieved? And why has its legitimate concerns not been addressed by Ottawa, which consistently plays up vote bank politics with an ethnic minority? When the Indian Foreign Secretary pointed that out some months ago, one could say he was being cynical by dispensing with India's problems. Now, the Khalistan issue is admittedly a domestic Indian issue, but it has become a transnational issue because now what you have are ostensible Canadian citizens who seek refuge, and the fact that they have a Canadian citizenship to call for secession in India. One wonders, why would they be interested in that when they are citizens of a new country and this has no bearing on their outlook in life, and they ought to be getting on as Canadians with their domestic issues, and there are several, I'm sure, to deal with. Then there is also the question of security of diplomats. The historian in me would remind you of what happened to Mr. Matre in February 1984 at the Indian Deputy High Commission in Birmingham. He stepped off the local double-decker, Parikshit, with a cake and a flower bouquet in hand for his daughter's birthday. She never saw him again, and neither did anyone. He was found beheaded after 2 or 3 weeks. And that, in that case, it had to do with JKLF militants. London tried in vain to get those Kashmiri Mirpuri's accomplices to be extradited from Pakistan. But of course, Ziaul Haq stonewalled it. So there is a precedent of Indian diplomats not just being verbally threatened, but physically being decimated. And that needs to be squarely also put into context. India-UK relations will not be affected.
Important points
even
there.
in the 16
Burzine,
FTA
I'll
rounds.
come back.
Yeah, okay.
Right, let me come back. Ambassador KC Singh, would you like to respond to what Burzine is saying? And also, do you feel that we are violating the Vienna Convention here? Could there be pressure? Could there be a legal issue that Canada could take up at an international forum, maybe at the WTO or any other? Could US and UK come to the aid of Canada if any kind of legal issue is raised as a result of that? Ambassador KC Singh?
No, I don't think this will go to WTO. This is essentially a bilateral matter. I don't think you can go to the International Court of Justice on something like this. This is essentially a bilateral decision. You can say India's not behaving in exactly friendly manner, but India can throw the book back and say, no, we want to impose the parity. Because as I said, even Article 11 says, unless there is an agreement to the contrary, generally it's free. So India may insist we want an agreement on how many of your people can be here and so on and so forth. I don't think that's an issue. But coming to your other point, I don't think Americans or the British will want this issue to impinge on their bilateral relations with India. And I think that's the Indian assessment. So they feel that Canada is isolated, though once in a while its allies, particularly from the Five Eyes countries, throw their weight behind it. But I don't think they want to go beyond that, because otherwise, why hasn't that so-called evidence come out, which obviously has been given by one of the Five Eyes countries, which is probably a phone conversation or something picked up. That has not come out because that country is obviously not allowing Canada to bring it in the public space because it knows it will affect its relations with India. So there is a larger issue. They want to hold the Canadian hand without jeopardizing relations between those countries and India. So I think essentially it'll have to be sorted out by Canada and India. And I think India is putting a little pressure here by curtailing the services, because it starts affecting the Indian community and the diaspora. And once it affects them, then the calculation, I think, is that a rethink starts within the diaspora. So what are we gaining by this?
Right.
And probably the feelings turn against the handful of Khalistanis who are causing this problem. and which then puts pressure on the Canadian government. Now, whether that works or not, we don't know, but that seems to be the calculation.
Right. Burzine, Canada has called India's move to expel 41 Canadian diplomats as completely unreasonable and escalatory. Do you think the India-Canada ties could worsen from here? Do you expect Canada to take more diplomatic action against India? They have stopped in-person services at their consulate, but the latest that we've heard from the VFS, that the visa processing service, is that Canada has not stopped or paused visa services. They are still happening.
Relations will go in a deep freeze. That is the long and the short of it, Parikshit, if you must know. It could deteriorate, but the general assessment I would posit is deep freeze. And until when would be your next instinctive question? Until the Canadian federal elections. Mr. Trudeau intends to stand for a fourth term, and his current third term is not one where he came in with a thumping majority. He has been a popular politician within the metropolitan left and liberal circles since 2015, when he entered the political fray. But his third term sees him in coalition with an NDP party led by a Sikh Canadian who is unabashedly a Khalistani secessionist at heart. He has to play to that gallery and to that individual who is holding him up on the floor of Parliament. There is every reason to believe that Mr. Trudeau will not come in with a thumping majority during the fourth term. And there is every reason to believe that the Conservatives may rout him too. So that needs to be seen when it occurs. I'm not jumping bridges until I cross them. But that needs to be pointed out. So relations will be in a deep freeze. To say nothing of the Indo-Canadian Free Trade Agreement. The Indo-British Agreement has gone through 16 plus rounds to hammer out issues, and it will still continue to do so. Make no mistake. I wouldn't put a date on it, but the Indo-Canadian one is in abeyance and will remain so. Consular services by the Canadians will continue, as well as air links as such. But the point is that India is making a position, and a principled position, I believe that they are generally aggrieved that nothing has been done to curtail such elements. The Canadian contention may be that they don't want to disrupt their social fabric with ethno-linguistic minorities within their fold. And likewise, the UK may say so, or the US may say so. But the question is, countries do have also country-to-country relationships, and I wouldn't call it house loyalties, but obligations to fulfill that need to be seen beyond the political electoral vote bank.
All right, we've run out of time, but thank you very much for joining us. We are going to take a break here on Global Eye. We request our panelists to continue being with us. When we return, we're going to talk about the Israel-Hamas war as it rages on. There is a growing fear of escalation in the Middle East. A special discussion with Elon Levy, Israel Prime Minister's office spokesperson, Ambassador KC Singh and Burzine Waghmar of University of London School of Oriental and African Studies when we're back.